Hello, everyone, and welcome to the webcast. My name is Christine Dursey Davis. I'm the Executive Director of APA Ohio and Vice Chair of the New Urbanism Division, and I will be the moderator for today's webcast. Today is Friday, November 14th, and we will hear the presentation, Creatively Transforming Streets for People in Los Angeles, Atlanta, and Santa Monica. For technical help during today's webcast, type your questions in the chat box found in the webcast toolbar to the right of your screen, or call the 1-800 number shown. For content questions related to the presentation, type those in the questions box also located in the webinar toolbar to the right of your screen. And we will answer those at the end of the presentation during the Q&A. On your screen is a list of the sponsoring chapters and divisions. I'd like to thank all the participating sponsors for making these webcasts possible and free to members. Today's webcast is sponsored by the Urban Design and Preservation Division. To learn more about all of APA's divisions, visit planning.org/divisions. To learn about chapters, visit planning.org/chapters. Upcoming on your screen is a list of our future webcasts. To register for these, visit www.utah-apa.org/webcasts. To log your credits, your CM credits for attending today's webcast, visit planning.org. Go to your dashboard and select Activities by Provider. Today's provider, again, is the Urban Design and Preservation Division. Then you can select today's title. This webcast has been approved for 1.5 CM credits for live viewing only. Some recorded webcasts are available for distance education CM credit. For availability of distance education credits, check again the webcast webpage, utah-apa.org/webcasts. And like us on Facebook, Planning Webcast Series, to receive up-to-date information on our upcoming sessions. And we are recording today's webcast. It will be available on our YouTube channel. Just search Planning Webcast on YouTube. You can request a PDF of today's PowerPoint by emailing planningwebcast@yahoo.com. I'm now going to turn it over to our first presenter, Melanie Smith. Melanie, it's all you.
Thank you very much, Christine. This is Melanie Smith, and we're really happy to be here this morning in Los Angeles, and looking forward to hearing some questions as the presentation goes on. So I'm Melanie Smith, and I'm a partner at Melendrez. We're a urban planning, urban design, landscape architecture firm in Los Angeles, and talk a little bit more about my connection to this subject and to the other panelists in a second. But just a word about what you're seeing on the screen at the moment. We were very happy to have been selected by the Urban Design and Preservation Division of the APA as one of their by-right sessions in the APA National Conference here that was held in Atlanta this past year, earlier this year. And so we're grateful to the Urban Design and Preservation Division for that support. We're excited to be able to share our thoughts about this subject with a larger audience, and as I said, looking forward to more interaction with everyone as this goes on. So let me just start with our panelists and telling you a bit about them. I already introduced myself, and I have the good fortune to lead the urban design and planning practice at Melendrez, and have had the good fortune to work with both Valerie and Jason on the projects some of the projects that they're going to focus on, and I think we're all pretty excited about the direction that planning is heading, and the new techniques we have in the toolbox to really engage the community around the work that we're doing. And so let me tell you a little bit about the panelists. We'll first be hearing from Jason Klieger, who is AICP, and he's a transportation planning associate and a project manager in the city of Santa Monica. He's the project manager for the Michigan Avenue Neighborhood Greenway project. He'll be talking about that. He's also been involved in the implementation of the city of Santa Monica's award-winning land use and circulation element, which includes managing projects that improve multimodal options, pursuing grant opportunities, updating the zoning ordinance, and he's got an MA in urban planning from UCLA, and we're excited to hear from him. Also, Valerie Watson is an assistant pedestrian coordinator for the City of Los Angeles Department of Transportation. She is embarking with her colleagues on a Safe Routes to School strategic plan. She's shoring up a complete streets engineering toolbox for the city, formalizing a citywide program, regulatory structure, and public interface for innovative design treatments, including plazas, parklets, and bicycle corrals called People Street. She's going to be talking a lot more about that during her segment of this. And since we were in Atlanta earlier this year, we were really excited to have the opportunity to meet Shannon Powell, who is Executive Vice President of the Midtown Alliance in Atlanta. And she's got 20 years of multidisciplinary planning, economic development, urban design experience, and she heads the Midtown Alliance now. She's really had the Midtown Alliance has been part of a really incredible transformation of a part of the city, and a strong underpinning of that was the award-winning Blueprint Midtown, a community-based master plan for Midtown Atlanta. To implement the plan, she and her team developed and executed new initiatives for streetscapes, open spaces, land use, and transportation that have become models for urban revitalization and a catalyst for dramatic redevelopment, resulting in over 40 high-density development projects. She's going to talk a lot more about that. I think they have not shied away from the public realm by any stretch in their work and have embraced really cutting-edge thinking about how to use the public realm and how to transform the public realm as they move forward. So I think you're going to have some really interesting presentations to hear from everyone today. I'm just going to start by framing the subject a little bit. We called this panel Creatively Transforming Streets for People. And we were thinking about the fact that in the times we've been through, in planning and in the economy, it's become, obviously more and more critical for us to be implementers, to really think about not just planning but doing, and not just really telling but showing in our work. And so we've been thinking about all sorts of different techniques that can showcase transformation quickly and effectively, and really engage the community in new ways in our projects. So when we talk about creatively transforming streets for people, what are we going to talk about in this session? We're really thinking about DIY in some ways, transforming the public realm, and obviously it's a collaboration between planners and designers and communities and institutions to make installations for a few hours, a few days, weeks, or months to test interventions in the public realm, design changes and opportunities on the ground and with the public. And it's called a bunch of different things. People call it pop-up urbanism, people call it temporary urbanism or tactical urbanism or urban acupuncture, guerrilla urbanism, all sorts of different things. And so I think all of these headings, fall, our work falls under all of these headings. And I'm going to talk just, though, specifically about some tools in the toolbox, or kind of a continuum of interventions that we think of that might occur along this realm of work. And so we're going to talk about events that might be standalone or within planning processes. We're going to talk about pilot installations and public-private nonprofit partnerships as well. And as I think you've all heard already, we're going to be talking about a range of things that are going on in that happened in Santa Monica, actually within the last year, and then the work that's going on in Los Angeles that's very transformational, and then some exciting work in Atlanta. So when we talk about the range of techniques for this tactical urbanism, pop-up urbanism, we're thinking about a range of sort of most temporary to most permanent, and the spectrum, goes from a category of things that are thought of as guerrilla urbanism. We're thinking about pop-ups that are embedded in a planning workshop or a planning process, and there might be standalone or pop-up events that are just occurring, and I think we're seeing more and more of that in our communities. And then temporary or pilot installations that might hang around longer. They may or they may not. They might be days, they might be weeks, they might be months, they might be longer. But there are opportunities to get things on the ground more quickly and have opportunities for communities to test them before they become permanent. So let's start with guerrilla urbanism. The subtitle is intriguing, of course, creating insurgent public space. And so I think we're seeing a lot of different ways in which this is manifesting in communities, and it has frankly been done for a long time. The image on the upper left of your screen, the Roadsworth installation. Roadsworth is an artist working started in Canada, and I think when he first started doing guerrilla markings in the street, he was arrested, and now he's invited to do installations in the street. But really, you can see a very playful transformation of a crosswalk and a really enhancement of it as a place. The pothole gardener, another example. In the UK, it's just an opportunity to look at an asset or something in the public realm as an asset, not a liability. Magda Sayeg's yarn bombing, that this example is in, I think I recall it was in New York. So an opportunity just to enliven the public realm for a moment. And then a little bit different version of that, but Aaron Nappersteck, one of the founders of Streets blog, one of his first initiatives was honkus that he did to respond to a busy street below his apartment in his neighborhood, and turning the frustration of that into poetry that he then posted on light pole around the neighborhood. It really became an element of urban life that brought people in the community together. And this is another example of a larger scale intervention of an artist in an intersection in Berlin. So things that can be very transitory but have a significant impact. Then we think about pop-ups that might occur in a planning process. So some sort of an event or an installation that demonstrates a transformation that's part of a planning process that allows stakeholders to experience improvements, not just talk about them, but to see them and touch them and experience them. And this one, Pop-Up Rockwell, was done in association with Kent State University, and demonstrated a separated cycle track on a street adjacent to the university for a period of time, and put planters in as separators, and really was able to make a significant impact. Test it, get feedback, and develop some data about the changes. And then Jason's going to talk about a pop-up in a planning process that we were involved with. We were consultant to the city of Santa Monica for this project as part of the Michigan Avenue Neighborhood Greenway conceptual design process. The centerpiece of that process was an event called Pop-Up Mango, where we took over a few blocks of a roadway, built a number of installations, and had over 400 people participate in what was an event, an opportunity for feedback, and a place for really the community to come together and experience their street in a really different way. And then pop-up events. So they might not be part of a planning process, but just a chance to expose communities, or for communities themselves to take a piece of their public realm and use it in a different way for a period of time. So I think we all know about International Parking Day that happens every fall. It just happened a little while ago this year, and people take over parking spaces on the street and furnish them and really inhabit them for a day, taking them over and using them for a variety of different ways. But having that sense of really inhabiting the street in a different way is a really powerful force for people, we find. And then other pop-up events, we certainly, I think, Better Block is a group that, a nonprofit group that is really making a big impact in a lot of areas of the country. Again, working with communities to identify improvements and install them and actually physically transform places for short periods of time so that people can experience them. They can then show them perhaps to elected officials and really have an opportunity to have it sort of this experiential, kind of visceral experience of change. And then also in terms of events, we think about the transformative impact of the open streets movements that have and events that have been occurring really that originated in Latin America, but have moved really all around the world. And we've seen such tremendous transformation occurring in New York with their Summer Streets program. And we're really seeing a cultural shift occurring as a result of Ciclovia here that's occurred here in Los Angeles. One event has turned into the goal of having it at least 4 times a year and more, and moving Ciclovia-style events all around Southern California. But when you get tens of thousands of people out on streets that are closed for the day, experiencing them in an entirely different way at a different pace with a different volume of sound around them and a different experience of relating to others in neighborhoods, it's been a very powerful thing. And then finally, temporary pilot installations. So, you know, we would love to build everything. We would love to have the dollars to build, you know, everything in a finished form, but sometimes we don't have the money, and sometimes we aren't sure, you know, whether installations will work perfectly right out of the gate. So just a couple of examples of using, trying things out in the public realm in a quick way and in a less expensive way. New York's pop-up pools on the left, and one of the many pedestrian improvements, pedestrian plazas that has been done in New York. And Valerie's going to talk a lot more about these kinds of installations here. Valerie Watson with the People Street program and what the things that the City of LA's DOT is now spearheading. This was a first installation really, and really revolutionary for us here in the city, a pilot installation at the Sunset Triangle Plaza, underutilized portion of the roadway, and taking it over as a public space. It was a pilot, an opportunity to try it out, and it's becoming permanent. So that is a race through, I think, the realm of what we call sort of pop-up urbanism, tactical urbanism, and urban acupuncture. And I would like to hand off to Jason Klieger next to talk a lot more about Pop-Up Mango and the Michigan Avenue Neighborhood Greenway. Jason, I think you have the con.
All right. Hi everybody. Thank you very much, Melanie, for that nice introduction. And my name is Jason Klieger, and I'm with the Planning and Community Development Department in the City of Santa Monica. And I'm going to talk to you guys about an innovative community outreach program that we employed to engage residents who typically avoid or are excluded from the public planning process. And so just by way of a little bit of background, this is the greater Los Angeles area. Santa Monica there is outlined in red. We're 8 square miles with 90,000 residents, but that population can almost triple during the day with employees and visitors and beachgoers. And many of those people bring their cars with them when they come to Santa Monica. And that leads to congestion issues and parking shortages. But right now we are at the brink of what I see as a transformative moment with the coming Exposition Light Rail project, which will have 3 stations in Santa Monica and will link us to the rest of the region, downtown, Culver City, all the other lines that are under construction are already operating. And so for the city, we're excited because this is going to provide transportation choices to people that live or come to Santa Monica. And the challenge for us is those first and last mile connections between destinations and the stations themselves. So we knew that we wanted to work on those first and last mile connections, and so we studied the Michigan Avenue corridor. You can see that highlighted here. It's primarily on that Street, Michigan Avenue, and on the east and west ends we are traveling along some other streets just to get around some obstacles in the street grid. And there are a lot of important destinations along this corridor. You can see the 3 metro train stations that will be operational soon, outlined in that kind of reddish orange. We have a lot of schools, including our high school, our city college, which has over 30,000 faculty and staff. We have parks, and then of course, everything else around it is neighborhoods and business districts, and so there's a lot going on along this corridor. Enhance the landscaping and beautification, and that whatever we do, that we need to be sensitive to the Pico neighborhood's diversity and rich history. And so we worked with our consultant team of Melendrez and the IBI group to develop a host of interventions that could advance the Michigan Avenue Neighborhood Greenway, or MANGO for short. And the grand idea was, instead of doing a typical presentation, was to do a temporary installation of what these interventions could look like. And so we called the day Pop-Up Mango, and you can see a map of the alignment at the top of your screen. We focused on about a 3 or 4 block stretch of it, seen there in orange. We had, it was a drop-in event, and it was for 4 hours. People could come at any time, leave at any time. And here's a detail showing where the event was. Michigan Avenue remained open to cars and bicycles and pedestrians with our interventions, or temporary installations rather, along that stretch. And then the 2 areas highlighted in orange are the street ends that we closed to create a block party festive atmosphere. And so just a word about that. We did very specific and tailored outreach to the residents of those two street ends because we didn't want our event to interrupt their lives too much, and so we walked those blocks for weeks leading up, gave out these flyers, and just made sure that those residents were aware that this was coming. And we also provided some replacement parking for them for the day at a nearby parking lot. And then we also wanted to get the word out to the general residents of the neighborhood. And so we worked with a street team to deliver these really visually exciting door hangers. We did about 4,000 of those to people along the alignment. And then we also had these signs that we installed along the alignment in the weeks leading up to the event. And the signs let people know that the event was coming. They gave people an idea of what the wayfinding and branding signage the project might eventually bring would look like, and it also had a map of the alignment. We didn't stop there. We partnered with our local cycling and pedestrian advocacy groups, our neighborhood groups, local nonprofits, and we also did the more traditional means by sending out email blasts, articles in the city newsletter, city webpage, all of that. And we found that we were pretty successful in getting the word out. A lot of people found out about it from the flyers and the door hangers and the signage that we posted. We also did some signage at our city's farmers markets in the weeks leading up to let people know about it. So here's some photos of the day of us setting up the event. Here we're putting down some stencils, some Sharrow markings for bicycles. This is straw wattle that's being laid down to work as a representation of where curb might be built. Here are some trees. And so you can see that it was a very involved operation, and it wasn't just people and volunteers, but we also needed some heavy machinery to get this all put in place. And to guide participants through the event, we created a passport program, and everyone who came picked up a passport, and then the passport guided them to the 6 stations. And at each station, by participating, the participant would get a hole punch in their passport. With a completed passport, there was an incentive that I'll get to later. We also had these little buttons that we gave out to people just so they had a little memento of the day. So the first station or temporary installation was chicanes. And here's another image. Chicanes typically come in pairs, and they create a slalom in the roadway to slow vehicles down. Here's the traffic circle that we installed with a beautiful California sycamore tree in the middle. This one really turned out nicely and was loved by the public. Here's a mini park. We had space on a side street where the roadway was extremely wide. This area was red curb. It wasn't parking. It wasn't a travel lane, and so we saw it as an opportunity to bump out the curb and create a space for people and landscaping. And then we demonstrated a traffic diverter at a critical juncture on the corridor to control automobile volumes. And so that diverter, you can see that it did have a cutout to allow cyclists to continue through, but automobiles are not able to enter at this point. And then on the right, you can see that there was a table that had staff members answering questions and taking feedback from the public at each installation. We had a signage and wayfinding station where we wanted to get information from people about the design of the wayfinding and also what key destinations in the neighborhood needed to be included on that signage. And I would note that we only had one station number 5, and that was located at one of the street ends, which led to that street end being far more popular than the other street end. And then the final station was station number 6, Build Your Mango, where we asked people to fill out surveys and synthesize everything that they had looked at, everything they'd experienced during the tour, and to give us that high-level feedback and kind of give us that direction to go forward with this project. And so we had Over 400 passports were distributed, and of the people that signed in, 75% of them were neighborhood residents. And so we were very successful both on turnout, but also turnout of people who were most impacted by the project. And so, as I mentioned, anyone who completed a passport was handed a $5 meal voucher to one of the 2 on-site food trucks. This is a grilled cheese truck, and then we also had a taco truck, and we also had a local ice cream truck that the name was just too good to pass up. They were the Tango Mango ice cream truck, so we invited them to come as well. However, we didn't provide any vouchers for their ice cream. We also had a partnership with the Santa Monica Museum of Art to do a little children's art activity, so it was a really family-friendly event. We even had a band playing to create a festive atmosphere. And here you see just one of the tables. Every station had a table, and you can see that it is literally covered with comments. We got a lot of great feedback and direction from our community. And all that information was synthesized, and we developed an infographic that we posted online so that people could see a record of the feedback that we got. And you can see along the bottom there, there's a ranking of the favorability of all of the different interventions that we demonstrated and talked about. And the traffic circle, 82% of the people that came to the workshop liked the traffic circle. Everything that we demonstrated or talked about, people were interested in. Even the traffic diverter, which was the most controversial element, still had a 55% approval rating. So what were the lessons learned? I highly recommend that you use fresh descriptions. We never talked about the second event as a workshop. We talked about it as a community festival and an installation, and so we really wanted to make it appealing. And I think community workshop, definitely those words turn off a certain segment of the community, and so we basically never talked about it as such. We took the event and the outreach to the community. So all of our events, including other workshops that we did, were held in the neighborhood, and our outreach, the signage, and the door hangers was all along the alignment in the community. We used social media. We did online pushes leading up to the event, including the day before and the day of, and we used a website called IFT to allow people to participate. So any Instagram photos that used the pop-up mango hashtag were automatically pulled and put on our department Facebook page, so that during the day content was being generated without us having to do anything. And then after the event, we did have an album full of images from the user's perspective. I would caution you all that while very worthwhile, events on the scale are a very big undertaking. We had at least 40 staff from the city, from the consultant team, and volunteers to pull off this event. We relied on donations from vendors for the trees and the plants and the furniture. Without their donations and generosity, we would not be able to have completed this event, and the installations would not have looked as beautiful as they did. Consider that all these materials are going to need to be stored somewhere. Fortunately, we have a city yard, and we were able to carve out a little corner to store things for the weeks leading up to the event. And then I would say, I hinted at this earlier, but one block party area would have been sufficient. We had 2, and it kind of spread out the excitement and dispersed the crowd a little bit. And I think it would have been even more fun and festive if everyone had been in one area. In spite of everything that we did hear some real critical perspectives, and so I would say that partnering with your neighborhood organization or your local business improvement districts in the preparation and design of the event is critical to bring them on board as partners. And then our project, as I mentioned, was grant funded, and I don't think that the creators of the grant ever imagined something like this being the result. And so, unfortunately, certain things that were really vital, such as porta potty rentals as we were outdoors, were not able to be paid for using the grant funds, and so we had to work with with our department budget to kind of move some funds around in order to cover those necessary items. And so with that, I would say that there's no replacement for actually seeing video footage of it, so I highly encourage you to pop onto YouTube and type in Pop-Up Mango. There's a couple videos there that give you a real great idea of the day's event. So with that, I will pass it over to Valerie Watson.
All right, so am I live? This is Valerie Watson with LADOT. Let's see. Oh, here we go. Now I should be here. Valerie Watson with LADOT. I work as an urban designer on pedestrian, bicycle, active transportation projects. And I'd love to give you all an overview of our new People Street program. People Street is our new formal citywide program for two project types, plazas and parklets. It's a program that's administered by LADOT, but we work closely with other city departments within our city structure. And bicycle corrals are similar, but handled by our colleagues in the bicycle program here in LADOT. And really, these projects are about reorganizing space, repurposing underutilized or redundant road space for people-oriented uses. So plazas repurpose street segments for public space. Parklets are repurposing on-street parking spaces. And similarly, bicycle corrals also are situated within on-street parking spaces. And the thing that they all have in common is that they're below the curb. So not looking at vacant lots necessarily, but within LADOT's purview, we look at the roadway. So all these projects sit below the curb in our roadbeds. We have over 7,500 miles of streets in the city of Los Angeles. That's a huge scale, massive geography, and we really see the emergence of our People Street program as being rooted in the tactical urbanism and the culture of open streets events that have happened in the city of LA over the last few years. And all of these types of events have allowed people to think differently about how they move about the city. And I think some of the other benefits that are important are that these types of events help build relationships with city staff and elected officials, as well as bridge that awareness among neighbors in the community. And that power of physical demonstration that Melanie and Jason have touched on is really important for making sure that people understand how these projects work and what the benefits are of investing in our public realm. So Ciclavia is one of those open streets events that has been wildly successful across LA. And whenever Ciclavia rolls down, for example, Spring Street in downtown Los Angeles, folks are exposed to some of our pilot projects, our parklets, our new bicycle infrastructure, our green colorized buffered bike lane, our new continental crosswalks, high visibility crosswalks. And so it's a fantastic opportunity for folks to be engaged with these changes in our public realm, but not in a heavy-handed way. They're just acquainted with it as they move about. So on that spectrum of intervention, the People Street program and the projects that we bring are really kind of more towards the permanent and sustaining changes within the public realm, but are very much part of that spectrum of temporary and ephemeral. People Street projects are based in a one-year renewable agreement, so you can think about them as temporarily permanent. Why is it important for us to have a formal program in the city of Los Angeles? We have 8 departments, 2 agencies, 2 commissions, and probably more organizations that all have some kind of responsibility for the public realm and the interface with the private realm. And so to streamline bringing plazas and parklets to Los Angeles, our program is based in community partnerships and has a one-stop shop, our website, peoplestreet.lacity.org, that creates that armature of process. And so we look to communities who know their neighborhoods best to propose projects, and we have one application cycle a year. Again, as I mentioned, based on a one-year renewable agreement between that community partner and the city, we are allowing those communities to place the design elements within the roadbed. And this streamlined process really hastens the installation, and that quick and cost-efficient transformation is made possible by having a pre-approved and required kit of parts of design elements. So that really avoids any lengthy design review on the part of the city whenever someone wants to do one of these projects. It helps us get these projects on the ground as fast as possible, and we see it as a phase one tool to catalyze those larger capital-intensive public realm improvements. So all this information is on our website, but as I said, these are based in partnerships. Depending on the project type, the community partner and the LADOT share different responsibilities and costs. Who makes for a good community partner? We're looking at organizations that already have some of the responsibilities and capacity for that in their DNA already. So business improvement districts, chambers of commerce, community-based organizations, even business owners and property owners can make for great community partners. We base the formalization of our program around some pilot projects that were actually very much community-driven. People across LA were asking, how can we bring these wonderful types of projects we see in other cities to our neighborhoods? And so here's our first pilot plaza in the city of LA, Sunset Triangle, our first pilot parklet, some other pilot parklets that were brought to LA. And all of that informed the development of a whole array of application manuals and program materials that really outline all of the steps of the process that someone would need to know. What are the requirements? How does the application work? How can they prepare for the application cycle when it comes up every year? As well as that kit of parts of design elements and technical appendices that are really open source documents for folks to use as they prepare their installation of their projects. These are all available for download on our People Street website as PDFs. What we try to do with these program materials is demystify the process, make it clear and consistent for everyone. What are all the steps? When do they need to happen? What's the critical path? So folks can plan ahead and rally the support that they need for their projects. Here's an example of one of the 11 parklet models that our People Street program offers now. This is an example of a parklet design that helps bring a little bit more cafe seating and permanent seating to a sidewalk that may have a constrained condition where seating against the building might not be possible. And all of our other 11 models address different urban design challenges or opportunities so that the neighborhoods across LA can say, well, which one of these really addresses the needs on our street? We also have formalized a human-scale wayfinding and identity signage program where LADOT actually installs these at all of the projects. And we're actually working on installing some of the first signs in the city at the end of this year. And it's important to show how these projects connect to the surrounding street network, pedestrian destinations, bicycle network, and other destinations that you might reach on foot or by bicycle. So along that spectrum of intervention, People Street is moving towards helping folks catalyze permanent changes to their public realm. And so for LA, one of the wonderful things that's come out of having a formalized People Street program is that we were able to leverage the kit of parts of design elements for plazas to do a corridor level road reconfiguration along 10 blocks in downtown LA on a historic Broadway. And to do the dress rehearsal or the temporary road configuration that's called for in a streetscape master plan, we were able to implement these changes for a little over $1 million to set the stage for the larger permanent full build-out that will cost about $50 million all said and done. So for just a fraction of the cost, here's a rendering of what the streetscape now looks like today. And so we're really proud to say, since we presented at APA National in Atlanta earlier this year, this project has been installed. And so leveraging that People Street Plaza kit of parts, planters, surface treatment, movable furnishings to affect that new road configuration. This is a photo of sidewalk extension outside of our historic Grand Central Market downtown. So we're really excited about having launched this formal program this year, and we've already had our first application cycle to kick everything off. We were able to select 3 plazas and 4 parklets to move forward through the process, and they're all actually in the final application stage right now in design development, and we are looking to tentatively install the 3 plaza projects early next year. We're starting to see a real geographical spread across our very expansive city. So in every corner of the city, we're starting to see how the People Street projects are being embraced by the community. And you even start to see how they relate to our burgeoning transportation network. Here's an example of a future plaza that will be installed next year. This is 43rd Place Plaza in historic Leimert Park Village in South Los Angeles. And so when this plaza repurposes that street segment, we'll start to see some of the same changes and give that legitimate venue for all the fantastic cultural and other types of activities that are already happening in this neighborhood but don't really have a public venue. We were so pleased with a couple of the current plaza projects when they were going through their initial application cycle. They actually leveraged the spirit of pop-up urbanism by holding pop-up events at their future plaza site in order to introduce the idea for the project to the community and actually show and demonstrate what could happen if they were to repurpose that plaza. And it was very successful for Pacoima and South LA to bring the community out to look and feel how this might transform their street segments. We're committed to pre- and post-evaluation for our projects. We want to measure the impacts to neighborhoods by comparing data before and after project installation, and that helps us to justify larger, more capital-intensive improvements at these sites so they kind of graduate from the People Street program and become capital projects. So now, moving on, I'd love to shift it over to Shannon Powell.
Hello, this is Shannon Powell. I'm in Midtown Atlanta. For those of you that weren't in Atlanta for the APA conference, Midtown is adjacent to downtown. It would be part of the center city. It's a major high-density area. It has not always been there. It started off as a streetcar suburb back at the turn of the century and was primarily single family. You can see by the image in front of you that it's no longer a single family neighborhood. This is an image even as soon as the 1970s, and you can see kind of the skyline today and how the community has changed. I think I'm different in that, one, I've probably been and seen the changes in planning over the last 20 years, and the transformation in the last 5 to 10 years is really spectacular. I'm so impressed with what my colleagues in LA and Santa Monica are doing, and what's striking to me is how creative both the planning efforts are, but as much what comes out of those. And so I'm looking forward to seeing how those transform our cities and change the way we do things. As I was thinking about the things that I was going to point to, I hadn't fully appreciated how fortunate I was to be in a nonprofit, which is also, by the way, a community improvement district. So much of our funding comes from that source. Many of you might think of that similarly to a business improvement district. It's different in Georgia in that you get the commercial property owners pay a tax into a fund managed by the district itself, but the businesses themselves don't necessarily pay that tax. Because we are both a nonprofit and a business improvement district or community improvement district, we do everything from the master planning process all through the execution to public safety and maintenance. We do that in concert with the city, but we have a very focused look on exactly on this particular neighborhood. In Midtown, it's about a 1.2 square mile area. It's about 120 blocks, just as some form of perspective. I think I kind of jumped ahead, and before I start with kind of some of the examples, I started to think about the myriad of processes just from the overall planning process and the things that we did at the beginning all the way through what we're doing today from a programming to try to transform our streets, and what the themes were and what are the successes and the things that we've seen that have made such a big difference. I used to say, well, one is commitment and ownership. We started with a planning process. It's not that much different than what we've seen across the country, but we did a very interactive type of planning efforts with giving people pens and paper and helping them design the plan. But that was back in '97, and we've done it a number of times over the course of the years to update that plan. But the thing that keeps coming back is continued ownership in that plan and a continued commitment to stick with it, because none of these things happen very quickly. The second observation is, I used to say, the Lone Ranger is dead. We don't, we really need all community planning process. Everything is from the ground, needs to come from the ground up. I still think that's, of course, incredibly true, but it's also important that we have influencers. When we look back at what our successful projects have been, it's been those that have had the ground-up support, but we've also had influencers and people in place that have been champions, ones that have the ability to help us execute, implement, and take it to the next step. Partnerships, there isn't a single example here, not from the great big projects that we've executed, at least from my perspective, all the way to the smallest thing in the street that you might consider a tactical urbanism is done without a strong partner with somebody somewhere somehow. That's just a defining characteristic. And then the final thing that I might add is the toolkits. Every project's a little different, and even though we're in the same area with the same community, with the same people, no matter what the project is, we've really needed to say, well, what is the toolkit, or what are the things that we need, or the steps that need to be taken in order to make this a very successful project. I'm going to take some of those themes, and as I walk through the process or some of the examples of things that we've done, I'll point back to these themes that I see coming up again and again. I'm going to show you the success, but for those of you that think that we didn't start, that we started at the top of the wrong, this is what we were looking at in 1997. We had a few high-rise buildings, but for the most part, this was the landscape that we were dealing with. I will say that tactical urbanism and the things that you do in a situation like that aren't nearly as important. It's much more important today. When you have this kind of situation, it's not nearly as hard to encourage people to transform them. We've taken on a huge set of master plans and capital projects. You can see in the small befores and after, these are projects that have been executed and implemented. This is a broad brush approach. As you look at these things, again, this idea of partnerships, in every situation, the City of Atlanta owns about 8 feet of right-of-way at the most, along the curb. So to widen the sidewalks, we had to go in and partner with every single property owner all the way down the line and ask them to give us an easement. So we didn't actually have pay for those easements. Again, when you're looking at situations like we are in these before pictures, that's not nearly as difficult to sell. And we weren't taking away lanes, which at least in Atlanta is where we start to run into those needs to do the kinds of things that you saw in Santa Monica and Los Angeles, that this was a relatively easy sell. This is an example of a plaza. This is a little harder sell. Again, the idea of partnerships comes together. This is a plaza. You can see in the before photo. What happened in this case is we took out the turning lane where the cars currently are, created a plaza. If you looked at this in an aerial, you'll see we actually ended up addressing all corners. We realigned the road. We created a streetscape. This was a physical project. But in order to do this, we had to get the buy-in from each of the adjoining property owners on every corner, plus the historic neighborhood that is immediately behind this plaza. In order for us to even begin to implement it, it also came with a grant from a foundation grant as well as a match from the Community Improvement District to make it happen. Today we use this space to plan and, to program and to try different things. We've tried in order to enliven the streets. So we've done some programs that brought in our retailer or our restaurants to do kind of a pop-up restaurant within this space on a regular basis to draw people into the space, to bring them into the street, and at the same time to reinforce our retailers. It was well received, but I can't remember which one of my prior colleagues said this. All of these things take a lot of time. That programming, while we might have a restaurant coming in and taking care of all the logistics, just to set up the organization and the promotion alone can be time-consuming. This is a future project. This is one that's getting ready to go to construction. It's out to bid now. It's a transformation of the bridges they're gateways into the community. This is a gateway on the north end of the district. You can see that it's the next step. But this is a partnership with the railroad that actually runs underneath it, the Department of Transportation, which this is a really big deal for the Georgia Department of Transportation to allow us to do these kinds of initiatives. But I will say that in this case, images and a picture was worth a thousand words. We didn't have to go out and kind of restripe in a temporary way, but it certainly shows, again, the theme of partnership. It has foundation funds, again, associated with as well as Community Improvement District funds. On the south end of the district, the Downtown Improvement District is taking on a similar bridge, and they mirror each other. Across the board, a series of different partnerships that have helped make this happen. When we kind of move into more of a temporary arena, these are two examples where we've created temporary park spaces with a lease agreement with the adjoining property owner. So the property owners allowed us to have the spaces for $1 a year. In the case of the lower park space, they actually made an investment back into this park space, so we didn't pay for the whole build out of that. It's a lease agreement that has a 5-year lease. If they, at some point, if the owner decides to develop, then they can pay us back over. The payback is amortized over that 5-year period. It takes away their fear that they won't, that we're not going to let them have it back, and gives us some comfort level that the investment we made is not completely, won't be a waste if they decide to move forward immediately. Our hope in these cases is that when these projects develop, while the whole space might not become a public park, that a component or a piece of it will be preserved. A couple other characteristics that you see, we're introducing a variety of different movable temporary ways of intervening and bringing the street, transforming the street with games, so that you see the badminton set here. It's amazingly popular, and we've left it. We thought it was only going to be up for a very, very short time, and it's been so popular that the ground, if I looked out my window, I could see the ground. It's well worn, and it continued. We leave it up because it's been so popular. This is another large project. This is actually our transit system. It's smack dab in the middle of the district. It's another example, again, of partnerships. We're looking at doing some temporary or to do some early interventions with crosswalks. You can see kind of in the lower image what it looks like today, and you can see in the top image what we hope to do. It's again about what can we do to bring in either temporary uses, ways to interact, and to engage this transit station. So often the approach for the transit station is, well, it's part of the public infrastructure. It's their job to do, and we kind of stepped back and said, you know what, these are real assets to us and we need to make them work. So this is an adopt a station approach. We're looking at partners again around us to help corporate partners, residential partners to help engage and adopt these stations. We're now working with the transit station or the transit authority to figure out what are the agreements, the maintenance programs, and how do we kind of set this up so that we can begin to engage that. But I expect in the next few months to see some of the crosswalks come in as a first step. This is Midtown has a huge arts component here, and this is a way in which we've really tried to bring our arts community to the streets. You'll see on the left, let's see, on the right-hand side, you'll see the rock. That's an enormous big rock. It's on that same kind of temporary park plaza that I showed you earlier with the badminton. This is a temporary installation. One of the things I like about this is that in an arts community, and I don't know if you guys have experienced this, but often the expectation of what you actually put in is so high. When we talk about it from a temporary perspective, they're so much more open to allowing a variety of different types of art to go in. Not very many people would call the art, the rock, a pure piece of art, but it is so interactive. People love it. What you see in this image happens all the time at all kinds of different times of day and throughout the year. It's really shown us the importance of interaction, of interactive art, and how we can use that. We are now looking at a temporary art program that will continue to take this approach and bring in art that we anticipate will stay for a year, maybe 2 or 3, but has a rotation to it. The dancers that you see is part of another partnership with a group called Flux. The idea was that we had these spaces and intersections in streets that needed transformation. I mean, we'd done the physical piece, but it still needed a lot of energy and light and creativity. This is a busking program. Through the month of April, they planned different buskers that came in. And then on the bottom image of the musicians, that is the Atlanta Symphony Orchestra. The Atlanta Symphony Orchestra is not known for going into train stations or into public environments and playing. You usually pay to do that. It's pay to see them. This is an effort on their part to come back into the community and to share their music, and they do this at the holiday season. They are doing it now. This is a photo just outside of the train station, or just on the edge of the train station that you saw earlier. All of these are representative of, again, partnerships. In our case, we don't necessarily, one of the roles that we play is just to help these other organizations understand what's allowable, help them get through a permitting process if that's something that's needed, help promote them. We have a variety of different roles that we play in order to help, again, transforming our streets. This is more event-oriented. We've done a number of, we've tried to seed a number of events. Our goal is really not to be the long-term, to maintain those, to have to continue to execute those events over the long run, but to continue to seed them and hope that they have a life of their own. Certainly, in these cases, these are a couple of cases in which I think that has certainly come about. The top image is called the Atlanta Food and Wine Festival, which is an amazing and wonderful festival. We seeded that with some additional funds to help them get off the ground. They're now up and running and provide just an amazing festival and event. The pop-up trucks that you see is something we did a number of years ago. We helped them understand what the rules were, helped get them started, put a little bit of seed funding and organization. It was wildly successful, and after the first year, it took off and started on its own, and it continues to run on its own today. The bottom image is simply that of a road race. We see a lot of that. We also have something called Streets Alive, which is similar to what's been happening in other cities where you close the streets for cycling, primarily for cycling and interactive arts. These are all temporary things. They're done predominantly by someone else, and we play the role of maybe providing that seed fund, facilitator, organizer, but our real hope is to bring as many partners and folks to the table to try to get them to help engage our streets and be part of it. So those are kind of my observations on where we are and where we're going. And I will say I hadn't, until I saw Valerie kind of lay out that one image where she showed all the different departments. I hadn't really thought were involved in building and maintaining and creating a street. I hadn't really considered how fortunate I was to be in a nonprofit where I really am doing much of what Valerie's doing inside, which is I'm working with our city partners, and I work across all of those different departments to execute these different programs, but I get the advantage of being able to see it from a planning perspective and an implementation one. And with that, I think I am turning this over back to Melanie.
Great, thank you. So I just got up a slide that gives you all of the contact information for all the presenters that you've heard today.
Great, thank you. Let's go ahead. This is Christine. Let's go ahead and jump into some Q&A. Folks, feel free again to use that chat box function to put your questions in. If it's for a specific panelist, please state so. This first question is for Jason. If you could talk a little bit more about if any of the projects have been completed. You know, you mentioned that there are a bunch of spots and different items that were constructed. Have any of them actually come through to fruition?
So we were very fortunate that our concept plan was approved by our council right before our CDBG funds had to be allocated. So we were fresh on the mind of everyone making those decisions, and we did receive an infusion of cash from our CDBG fund. And so with that, we have started the design of the first phase. The design's almost complete, and then beginning early 2015, we will construct that first phase. So nothing's been built just yet, but it is coming in. It will, the entire project, you know, it's a 3-mile alignment, and so it's definitely going to have to come in phases. So phase 1 is happening soon.
Great. And continuing with that, could you talk about the budget for the initial installations, and also did you keep any of the materials after the fact? Like you had mentioned that there were trees donated, and you know there were specific things that were used to act as curbs. You know there were seating areas. Did you return all of those things to the folks that had given them to you?
So the donations were actually made to our consultant team because we weren't able to accept them as a city. So the trees went back to the vendor, Valley Crest. I'll give them a little plug. And the plants from Monrovia went back to our consultant team, and so I think they took some, and then some people who were at the event on the day of were able to, you know, take a little potted plant home. The temporary benches went back to the vendors. And I think the only thing that ended up staying in the city's possession was the straw wattle. We gave that back to our Public Works Department. In terms of the budget, we basically, for the event, you know, the hard costs of the event, it was about $10,000 to cover the food trucks and the various, you know, the band and all those sorts of things.
Just to chime in on that one, you know, because we're a consultant that the vendors donated the plant materials to. It is just another thing to think about because we were donated 80 plants by Monrovia, and so you know it's a challenge to that could be a whole other part of the planning process is figuring out what the next home for those is. If you wanted them to have, you know, another distinct location they went to, we were able to give them away. But you know, that could be a whole other part of the project to figure out a planting or something that could follow on from a process like this.
Great, thank you. Next question is for Valerie. On the Broadway project, who's paying for the plazas? Is it the city, partners, property owners, and who will be taking care of watering all the plants and just the general upkeep?
Yeah, that's a great question. So since this is more of a city-led top-down type of project, it's a little bit different than the plazas and the parklets, but it does still require strong partnerships with the community-based organizations and the business improvement districts. That there's actually 3 bids that have territory along that corridor, and so in terms of the project's overall implementation cost, that came from the city. We have Measure R, a local sales tax that allows us some money for pedestrian bicycle projects, and we were able to leverage some of those dollars to implement the project. And then as far as maintenance and the partnerships with the business community, we actually worked with all the individual businesses along the corridor to adopt the furnishings, the tables, chairs, and umbrellas, and those businesses along the corridor take those in and out at night. And then we I guess with the initial project cost, we're able to provide those businesses with those starter kits of furniture that you saw in the photograph. But over time, we'll look to the business community to replenish that stock of furnishings and maybe even add to it to further activate the space. In terms of the watering and cleaning, we'll be partnering with the business improvement districts as the project persists. And over time, the city will cobble together funding to build out block by block the permanent streetscape with concrete. So you'll see the temporary condition transform. So we hope to also look at the future streetcar that is planned for heading southbound on that street to also infuse some dollars into that permanent build out. So we're looking at maybe a 2 or 3 year horizon on individual blocks where we'll be partnering with the business community.
Great. And Valerie, is there a set amount of money available annually for parklets and plazas, or does it vary from year to year?
Yeah, the city has very limited staff and funding resources for projects, and so we'll have a cap on plaza projects that can move forward for each cycle. So we set aside and budget for that, and through the application process, if we have more viable applicants, then we have the resources to help foster their projects, then we will have to prioritize projects moving forward in future cycles.
Okay, thank you. This next question is for Shannon, and actually it's written in by Margaret Rifkin, who is with the Urban Design and Preservation Division, and she meant to be with us to give a few introductory remarks, but was having some technical issues. So this question comes from Margaret. Shannon, could you please explain the interactive nature of the rock art installation? Do people push it and rotate it? How exactly does that work?
That's exactly what they do. They said it's a giant rock and you go and push it. The artist designed it from an engineering perspective so that could happen. And when we installed it, one of our board members said, just don't let the thing fall over. So so far it's stayed up, and fortunately it seems pretty secure, but that's exactly what you do. You just go and push it, and it's such a big rock, it's really inspirational. I also thought I'd comment back on what Valerie said. I think you're seeing the power of what a community improvement district or a business improvement district can do, that once these plans are done and executed, that the maintenance of those is such a big deal, and community improvement districts or business improvement districts are such an instrumental tool to help actually maintain them.
Great, thank you. These next batch of questions can be for any of you. The first one, what permitting hurdles did you encounter? the person that's typing in says that we have particular issues with our fire department. Did any of you doing any of these temporary installations come under any fire from any groups?
This is Shannon. We did. We found all of them. The fire department. We found the fire department. We found the police department. We found public works. I mean, whether it's we've done the parklets, and we ended up, we were hoping to be able to have a permit that allowed us to have a day to permit those for a day, and instead we just sat there and fed the meter because we couldn't get a permit from the police department to do that, to have it for a day. I mean, it just across the, we're trying to replace sidewalks. We can't, we can get them eventually. It just takes enormous time and enormous patience just to keep working through it and keep figuring out how answering the questions and keep trying. But certainly we're seeing it over and over and over again.
And this is Valerie Watson with LADOT. I think in our effort to streamline the process in the public-facing program for People Street, we worked really hard in the early days back of house internally at the city to make sure that everybody in all the departments were cool with this stuff. And so fire, PD, all the different public works bureaus were all involved in reviewing not just the kit parts of design elements, but even our site location criteria. And one thing that we did is we leveraged existing permits when we needed to. So our parklet projects utilize our A permit, which is allowing folks to do work in the public right-of-way. And by kind of keeping it within the ballpark of our existing regulatory structure, that gave city staff a level of comfort with the process on the back end. Fire was really integrally involved in understanding access to plazas, and they actually are part of a team internally that reviews all the potential projects that come in to make sure that there are no impacts to fire's ability to access any of the buildings that are nearby. In the event that they need to have access within the plaza, we actually provide a clear distance with our perimeter planners. So all of that's to say that the internal coordination is critical and key so that you don't have any problems down the line with folks who have moved forward and rallied all their resources and then suddenly their project's not viable. We make sure in the early days, whenever applications come in, that we have all those conversations internally, make sure that we have that project feasibility taken care of.
And this is Jason. Yeah, I echo what Valerie is saying, and I wanted to just add that one nifty facet of our temporary installation was that we used this spray chalk that doesn't wash away immediately, especially here in Santa Monica where we hardly ever have rain. So the outline of the traffic circle was still on the ground for a few weeks afterward, and we did a field test with our fire department. They brought out their 3 different truck sizes with the different turning radii and tested driving around the circle and gave us really good feedback for this phase we're in now, which is the design.
We've had some similar kinds of successes like that where we've wanted to go in and widen or narrow an intersection. We had one situation where there was concerns about the buses being able to move. And we went ahead and coned that off and mirrored what the design was going to be, and then had the buses come and run, and the public works and fire department came out and watched to make sure they were comfortable with the radius.
Great. Now, in terms of having conversations with various facets that are all involved, there are some questions that are coming in related to liability in terms of having people, one, coming out for the day and experiencing and being in some of these temporary spaces, and B, specifically talking about ADA accessibility. Were there any conversations that had to be had first to accommodate those ADA accessible initiatives?
As an organization, we carry liability. So we are covering ourselves for any of those kinds of insurance-related issues of having people in the spaces. We do try to design the spaces to be ADA accessible. Certainly the public right-of-ways and what we're doing on the private right-of-way, it's a little different because they're privately owned, but regardless across the board in what we're doing, we carry additional insurance, but we're not, again, it may be, this is Shannon, by the way, it may be a situation where that's another real advantage of having a third party working in partnership with the city to do some of these things, is that we can carry some of those liabilities that the city might not otherwise want to do.
Valerie here in LADOT. With our People Street program having that formalized kit of parts, ADA, the accessibility affordances are built in to that standard pre-approved set of design elements. So that way our partners don't have to think about clear distances to access a parklet. And so that's really helped make sure that we just have that standard baseline of accessibility as the projects manifest physically. And then in terms of liability, our MOU, that legal agreement between the city and community partner, it really outlines and clears up who's responsible for what. And so the community partners are liable for any of the things that they're responsible for. So if they were to be negligent in some of their activities around cleaning the project, that wouldn't be the city's liability, it would be their liability. But in terms of the project's location, that kind of the higher order liability, that's obviously something the city is responsible for under that agreement. So it's important to have that legal documentation worked out. A pilot process for a city is a great time to get all the kinks worked out on making sure you have all the legalese written appropriately so that you can standardize that for the projects moving forward.
And I'll just add that for our installations, you may have noticed in the entry that we used MUTCD compliant signage for everything so that they really were functioning as though they were permanent installations.
And the street ends, the hubs of the installation, were in inaccessible locations. So we had that going for us too, and the fact that the city was the agency we were working with, obviously to stage the installation was a huge advantage. We weren't trying to come into the city and do something cold. We were working with all the different city departments really from the beginning of the project to convene and to make sure that we kind of had all the bases covered in terms of what we could and couldn't do in the street.
I'd add on Valerie, we're really Valerie's counterpart. So she's talking about an MOU. We actually have an MOU with the City of Atlanta in order to do the things that we do. And again, it's laid out specifically on what we're responsible for, where that liability lies, and what requirements we have to make. And essentially, they take everything and they pass it along to us. And I think that's really depends on the project and it depends on the city.
And I just want to add one more thing, Valerie, LADOT, that we require all of our community partners in the early stages of the application process to demonstrate that they either already have a minimum of $1 million of general liability just as part of their day-to-day operations as an organization, or that they have purchased additional insurance at that minimum $1 million level, so that everyone's protected. Every state, every city is different with tort liability and whatnot. So here in our context, that was our thinking ahead, just making sure that everyone's protected in the event that something happens.
Thank you. This is again for everybody. So how do residents respond to such temporary interventions? While creative and fun in Detroit, for example, residents might also be, or this might be received as cynical and perceived as an avoidance in long-term infrastructure investment. So I guess perhaps maybe what this question is getting at is, okay, you do a temporary installation somewhere, and that interim time between the installation and hopefully getting it funded and pulled through, how do you communicate with the community so that they maybe don't become cynical and think, oh, well, this was just a waste of resources for one day and it'll never happen? So how do you communicate with the residents on that level?
I'll start out in LA here. Our council members are really kind of the front lines of interface with the community in a lot of respects. And our very first plaza project, Sunset Triangle, is a great example where it was only on the ground for a little over a year, and it was so warmly embraced by the community that folks started asking the council member, can we make this a permanent roadway to plaza conversion? So the council office is really, in our city, is the lead on establishing and kind of doing all the regulatory footwork to bring that road segment out of permanent circulation. And they work in the back end with city staff on that. So right now, I think that's a great question. There's a lot about communication that we may not be really getting the word out about the fact that this project is really working towards graduating from People Street and that temporary status into a permanent conversion. So well taken question. I think that's a challenge for city staff all the time, is how to best message that.
But some of the, this is Melanie from Melendrez, I guess some of I mean, I feel like the Pop-Up Mango, the Broadway project, just to name two, have been really warmly embraced. And I think that in some cases we're talking about significant transformation that might occur in a space or in a neighborhood. And we're talking about things that may still be new to people. So rather than having people concerned about a waste of resources, they're really appreciative of the opportunity to test the waters, to put the toe in the water first before they see their jurisdiction diving in to do something that they haven't had a chance to really check out and kick the tire a little bit. No pun intended.
Great, thank you. I think we have time for one last question. Has anyone experienced any accidents between cars and people or bicycles in these pop-up or temporary installations?
I think I would say
we were fortunate here on
Yeah,
no, for the Pop Mango, we didn't have any incidents. We were very fortunate. Everything was, like I said, designed as though it were a permanent installation, and it had the signage, and we also, had these dory poles, and it was very clear that something different out of the ordinary was happening, and though people, respected the signage, the diverter worked, people weren't, trying to turn into that street, even though on a normal day they are able to turn there, so everything worked out nicely.
In LA, we have had one unfortunate incident where I guess I am taking a little bit of liberties here, but a wildly intoxicated drunk driver it breached one of our parklet sites, and we're working with the community partner to rebuild and repair that parklet. And I think what, even though that was such an unfortunate and rare occurrence, that one of the silver linings is that we really were able to have internal and external conversations about the fact that we can't design anything within our streets for drunk drivers. That's not what engineers do. That's not what urban designers do. But we can make sure that our kit of parts has a very solid set of design elements that help to, I guess, absorb the impact if something like that were to happen. So we've learned a lot from that incident, and I think other cities have also had incidents in the last few years. And again, I think that's a great opportunity to actually expand the conversation out to what's really contributing to that kind of thing happen, which is either speed or other issues. And so enforcement, collaborating with other departments becomes paramount in that kind of situation. So I think we're really learning lessons from some of those types of things that have happened, and being able to evolve our program over time to be the best it can be.
I'll take it from a little different perspective, which is most of our big capital projects or the temporary stuff has been kind of in plazas or parks, or not really at risk of the kinds of accidents. On the flip side, some of the permanent installations that we've done may not been exactly as you would want them. For example, the buses may not have had the right right-of-way, or we didn't have quite the right line of sight for the pedestrian, and we've had to go back and rebuild stuff. And I think if we'd done it in a temporary fashion the first time, we would have seen those modifications earlier on. It would have certainly been a whole lot more cost-effective had we done some temporary stuff and then come back and done the permanent stuff later.
Great, thank you. So I think it's 2:30 Eastern Time, so I think we need to wrap up. So with that, I'd like to thank Melanie and Jason, Valerie, and Shannon for joining us today, and for the Urban Design and Preservation Division for hosting today's event. And everyone have a great weekend. We will see you next time.